happens is, and when that happens, the issue that tends to happen is that the new employees don't know the safety procedures or don't know the neighborhood that they're going into. And like I said, I see a hiring like frenzy right now, and most of our new hires on site might not be aware of their surroundings. So we'll go over that in just a second. And new construction, new residents as well. We're having a lot more people coming into San Jose that maybe are not used to San Jose. Maybe they're going into a business or they're moving into a location that has had gang activity for, the past couple years. And maybe they don't know that they shouldn't wear blue or red or be out at certain times of night or interact in certain areas. So all these challenges as a business owner, these are things that you should have in mind, especially when onboarding new employees. If you are in an area that you know has gang activity, you should warn them and let them know, please don't wear blue or red. I know nobody wants to scare anybody, but it's good to keep your employees informed, as well as parking lot safety. Where is a safe place for them to park? We'll go over that in just a second. So everybody has 3 natural reactions whenever they're dealing with danger, because that's what we're dealing today. We're dealing with things that are a little scary. We're dealing with things that not everybody knows how to deal with. And some of the things really do sound very scary to some people. So that makes them shut down. So just to keep in mind that there are 3 basic human reactions or human instincts whenever it comes to expressing fear or dealing with fear. The first is to freeze. Most people actually freeze when they're encountered with something fearful. That's about 80% of people, meaning they do nothing. So say this employee is involved in an armed robbery, or maybe they're dealing with an angry person. They literally will not know how to react to that person. Keep in mind that you as small business owners or business owners in general, you might actually be a fighter. You might be a leader. So might be that small percentage that will know how to react. But we're also going to learn about your employees. Maybe your employees don't know how to react at that moment. So 80% of people freeze. They don't know how to react. They don't know what to do. The flight, those are the people that run. So if you've ever seen a movie where there's a natural disaster and you just see people running and screaming, that's another 10 to 15% of people are runners. No matter what happens, they're going to leave you. They're going to make sure that they're in safety, but they're also not going to help the situation. They're going to make sure that they personally are in a safe situation, not necessarily you or your employees. And then, like I said, small business owners, fighters. You're usually the leaders and the ones that walk or run towards the danger. If you see an issue, you're usually the one that goes and fixes it. Now, why is it important to know how you're going to react to fear? Because if we're going to talk about robbery, we're going to talk about theft, we're going to talk about angry people, you need to know how that employee is going to react, especially if you are making them responsible for calling 911 or you're making them responsible for a safety procedure. You should look at their behavior. And I'm always asked, well, how do I know what I am or what my employee is? Is there like a fun test that they could take? And really, it's not a fun test or even a test that's accurate. It's getting to know who they are and asking them questions if they are comfortable, and asking them things like, hey, when you were in a dangerous situation before, be it maybe a car accident, or maybe you were in a situation where somebody was yelling really loud, maybe somebody was confronting you, how did you react at that moment? And they'll share, they'll say, you know what? I didn't know what to say. So I just stood there and I took it until somebody else stepped up and took care of the situation. That probably means that they're a freezer. If they ever share a funny story and saying, you know what, I got so scared at a haunted house that all I did was run and I left everyone behind. Well, they're probably a runner, or it's probably better that you don't give them some task that they're going to have to stay behind and help everybody out. Because we see that happen also with small business owners, is they will give everybody a specific task. You have to make sure that that task you're giving them matches what they're actually going to do in a moment where they're faced with some sort of danger. Trusting your instinct is very important. Very important. So most of the time, unfortunately, when we come across a victim, and it may be a victim of a carjacking, a burglary, things of that nature, they'll say, you know what, I knew something was wrong. Something inside of me just told me not to go. Something told me something was wrong, but I just went ahead and did it because I didn't want to, show this person I was scared. I didn't want to make them feel embarrassed if they weren't going to do anything. And this is when I tell you it's okay to trust your instinct. And it's not about embarrassing anybody else. It's not about pinpointing an action with anybody else. It's making sure that you feel safe at that moment. Now, as an owner, you have to communicate that to your employees. For example, that day when you're not there and your employee calls you and says, you know what, there's this new customer in here today, something, he's just acting off, I don't feel safe, can I call 911? And the answer should always be yes. If your employee feels unsafe at that moment and they trust their instinct, they really should be instructed to call 911 at any moment they feel unsafe, and they know not only feel unsafe, but they are physically in danger, either themselves or property at that moment. You should encourage them to always call 911 at that moment. But I know it's difficult for some people to call 911 because they are embarrassed. They don't want to trust their instinct. They want to make sure that they handle the situation on their own. But what tends to happen after that is if they wait too long, now that's going to delay service. So if they wait 2 to 5 minutes because they don't want to, embarrass the person, but the person is screaming, the person is angry, now that's going to delay service 2 to 5 minutes. And the situation might be a lot worse or a lot more violent than if they just would have called 911 at that moment. So when trusting your instinct, it's not only for new people that are coming in contact with you, but maybe it's somebody that you've already had contact with. This might be somebody that you've already known, a frequent customer, but every once in a while, this frequent customer is a little bit angry, or maybe they have mood swings. So ask yourself, has this person acted this way before? Is it just towards me, or is it to somebody else? Is it targeted, or is it general? Like I said, is it for everyone? Does he yell at everyone? And if so, how, as an owner or an agency, are you going to figure out how to keep your employees safe? Because nobody should come to work and feel unsafe or feel threatened. And it comes back to your situational awareness. So there's something called healthy situational awareness, and it's very easy. It's called paying attention. And I know that's very difficult because we have our cell phones, we have our responsibilities. And I don't know about you, sometimes I have so much to do at work that I'm driving and I reach my driveway and I have no idea how I got to my driveway. I mean, I obviously know I got there safely because I'm parking my car, but I don't remember if I stopped at a stop sign. I don't remember how I used my turning signals, or if I did, I don't remember the songs because I'm constantly thinking of the next thing to do, my next task. Situational awareness is trying to be actively and visually available to all your surroundings, meaning 2 blocks before you get to your business or you get home, you put that phone away, you stop thinking about everything else, and you just start paying attention. Are there cars parked where maybe there shouldn't be any cars parked? When you're parking your car, is there somebody sitting in the car next to you? Does it look like they're having a lunch break, or are they really scoping something out? You cannot look at suspicious behavior if you are just not aware of your surroundings and you're listening and your hands are nice and free to make sure that you assess your surroundings. And what that time frame, what that gives you is more time to react. So if you're not aware, you don't have a healthy situational awareness at the moment, you're going to have maybe 5 to 10 seconds to react to something that's dangerous. If you are nice and aware, maybe you have 30 seconds to a minute to react to something that's dangerous. And then 30 seconds to that minute will make a huge difference when it comes to your personal safety. When you're walking to and from work, and this is going to look differently for those people that have ample parking right next to their business, as opposed to those business owners that have parking that's removed or far away from their location. So whatever you bring with you to work or anywhere, really be okay with losing it. Unfortunately, we have a lot of purse snatchings, cell phone snatchings, especially in our downtown core, pickpockets, things like that. And people just come up, grab them, run away with them, or walk away with them. And it's your instinct as a person, as an adult, to go get your property back. But I want to assure you, no property that's taken from you, nothing is irreplaceable. If there's something that you're carrying with you that's irreplaceable, I want you to think twice on that. You could cancel credit cards, you could replace money, you could replace all those things, but you cannot replace yourself. So a couple of years ago, unfortunately, we had a professor that was taking a walk by San Jose State. And I think it was, about 11 p.m. midnight, but he did this often. That's how he would clear his head. Somebody took his wallet. He went to go fight for his wallet. Unfortunately, this professor lost his life. So now when we think about a situation like that, would you rather have your wallet, or would you rather have, your family member back, your professor back, your friend back? And the answer every single time is, I would rather have my loved one. I would rather have my professor. I would rather have my friend back than that wallet. And it's the exact same thing with any other property you have on you. So again, if you feel like you really can't live without this property, please don't take it with you. Dress for the job. So look at things that you're carrying. If you are carrying 2 or 3 bags, that could really weigh you down. If you need to run out of a situation or somebody confronts you and is physical with you, if you have a backpack, that's going to throw off your balance. If you're carrying a coffee cup and your cell phone, one in each hand, you're not going to be able to easily defend yourself because you already have something in your hands. So try as much as possible to not carry too many items. Your cell phone, especially when walking downtown, should be in your pocket or somewhere it can't be snatched easily. And just like this picture here, we have about pre-pandemic, what we were seeing a trend where people were using these scooters, driving by people really fast, snatching the phones. And by the time that the person realized that their phone was snatched, that person was maybe a block or 2 blocks away because they were on these mobile scooters. After the robbery or the theft, and then they would just get rid of the scooter because it was a shared item. So anything that you have in your hands at that moment can be taken. Your footwear. So if you are not a good runner in heels, I know I'm not, I always have to wear flats and I'm very aware of that. If you cannot run in heels, maybe you should take a pair of sneakers with you or keep that in your office when you're going to be back and forth, especially in a high walkway area. And working really, really late at night. I know that happens to a lot of people, especially when there's a time change. Right now, we're very lucky. We have a lot of sunlight, but that changes right around fall, September, October, 5 p.m., that sun is down. So if you went in to work earlier, maybe you parked really far away. By lunchtime, you see that parking lot opening up. It might be a good idea to walk to your car, move that car under a street light or closer to your location. That way, when you leave work, it's going to be in a safer location than that first parking spot that you had to choose. So we have a lot of issues also with mental illness and substance abuse. And it's not so much because of the person, but it's because of the side effects or the symptoms that this person has. So we always say that people with these, with either mental illness or substance abuse issues, it's not that they're more dangerous, they're not. They're just more unpredictable, and there's a variety of reasons. So one thing that we're doing differently in the police department is trying to implement a unit called the Mobile Crisis Response Team. And this team is full of professionals that know how to de-escalate situations with people that are having either a mental distress or a mental emergency or a substance abuse emergency. So when we'll talk about 911 and how to call that in properly in just a second. But there's some things that most people do when they're having a distressful moment. So if you believe that somebody either around your business or in your business needs some sort of mental help, they're going through a mental health emergency, you can let the dispatcher know and describe their behaviors. I know I'm not a doctor and I'm not an expert. I know something that's very basic, but I know how to describe some of those behaviors to the dispatcher. The dispatcher can then make that assessment and see if the mobile crisis response team is going to go out and help that individual. Whenever you approach somebody, there's other things that are going on. Maybe you know this individual and you've known them for a couple of years and they've never been an issue, but maybe that day they're having a really bad day. Maybe that day something went wrong and that's the reason why they're reacting violently. Every time you approach anyone, you have to approach them like you're approaching them for the first time. Don't ever have your guard down. I'm not saying don't trust people, but I am saying to be aware and approach that person or approach that situation like it's the first time you're approaching it. And also think of language. We have a lot of miscommunication just because people literally don't speak the same language. Bay Area, we're very diverse. About 40% of our residents speak another language, and that's their first language. I know I have a second language myself. So when you're approaching somebody, especially if you're trying to remove them from property or they're acting a little bit erratic, keep in mind that they literally may not understand what you're saying. So don't take it personally if people are not responding to you in the way that you want to be addressed. It might be that they're dealing with a mental health issue or a language barrier issue. Or maybe they're just having a really bad day and they're really angry. We get a lot of that, especially in businesses. So try to pay attention to people's body language. If they're throwing their hands around, obviously they're upset, they're raising their voice. The last thing that you should do when confronting an angry person is to match that level or to match that anger. Whenever they raise their voice, you raise your voice, it's not going to end up well. Remember, your goal is to make sure that everybody is nice and calm and to neutralize the situation to make sure that you're safe, your other customers are safe, and your employees are safe overall. So matching angry energy is not going to help anyone out. Don't take it personally. Remember, they might be going through something that's completely distant or separate from you. You just happen to be the person that's getting the anger at that moment. So don't overpromise. If there is an angry customer over, I don't know, over their food not being what they want, the last thing that you want to say is, come by tomorrow. I promise the owner's going to be here and I promise we're going to give you 100% refund. Don't ever promise, because somebody that hears those words, they will come back and they will expect you to deliver. Always reach out to a coworker before you start your shift to know who's going to be on call. Don't ever, so you won't have to deal with them alone. If you use things like code words, for example, at banks a while ago, or in other agencies a while ago, what they would do is they would create a code word. So whenever an employee felt unsafe with a customer, they would use that code word. For example, the red envelope. They would say something like, hey, can you get me the red envelope? That would let other employees know, hey, my coworker needs help. Either it's time for me to call 911, or I'm going to move up to the register, or I'm going to help de-escalate the situation. And the reason that you want a code word is because you don't want to make somebody more angry than they already are. You don't want to alert them to say, I feel unsafe. That actually might make somebody angrier. So by using a code word, it allows you to call for help without making that person more upset. And always ask yourself if the anger is justified, because sometimes people have a reason to be angry. It's not okay that they're yelling at you or they're screaming at people, but maybe their anger is justified. And if it's justified, how can you remedy that without overpromising? And really, your goal is to remain safe. It's never, we never teach like tactics. We never teach like physical self-defense, because if you're in that situation at that point, it's a little bit too late. It's very difficult to fight somebody off. And I know I didn't have a slide here, but the second question that I usually get after dealing with angry people is, well, what about mace? What if I get a gun for my business? What if I get a steel bat? What if I get a taser? And this is my answer for everything. Even though those things, yes, they are used to protect, not everyone is good with them. Not everyone is good with firearms. Just because you have a firearm doesn't mean that you're going to know how to use it. Same thing with a taser. Those things malfunction all the time. And I always give the example of the fire hoses or retardants. What was the last time you used a fire extinguisher? Probably never. We see them all over the place and we know that they have instructions on them, but we probably haven't used one. So when we have to use one, we will most likely panic, take about a minute or two to figure out how to use it, and then use it. It's the exact same thing with a weapon. We're not talking about what's legal or not legal, is what's practical and what's safe for you. If you are really relying on something that's going to hurt maybe yourself or someone else, I suggest you look at classes. I suggest you do all the practice that you need to, that you're comfortable and that your employees are comfortable with that. So for example, if you have an employee that really is not comfortable with weapons or firearms in your business, you should know that. Not only because they will not use it, but because somebody can use that same weapon against them. You have to be very aware of the comfort level of your employees and the people around you. That being said, there are agencies that teach gun, safety. There's agencies that teach self-defense without weapons. There's agencies that teach how to use, I don't know, a taser and mace, but that's all separate. You should be very comfortable with anything that you choose to protect yourself and your business. If you have a location that has a lot of cash sales, you really want to increase the effort. By that, it means you have to make it harder for the people that are targeting you or your business to get what they want. And ultimately, they want either a product or money. Those are usually the two things that they want. So you have to increase the visibility. I know a lot of locations that love to have advertisements all along their windows, and that's great. Or they'll have like beautiful art covering all their windows or shades because of the sun, things like that. The issue with that is if there's something now going on inside of your business, people outside of that won't be able to see. So if you need help, literally no one will see that you need help. So increase the visibility. Access control. Areas where people should not be going to either need a door, a lock, a gate, a key card. Don't leave it open. People will find their way back there. When we talk about target hardening, what areas are easily able to be hardened? So do you need extra locks? And if so, where? Is your lighting updated? Most of the time people pick locations to burglarize because it's easy to break in and it's nice and dark. So if it's either a light that is located on your property, then you can do that internally. But maybe lights are off on the city street and that's not providing the safety that you need. then we could connect you with the city agency that makes sure that those things are updated. So really make it difficult. Make your place light up nice and bright when need to. And especially when there's a lot more people there, make it nice and open so they won't have easy access. You have to reduce the reward. So if you run a cash business, especially, people take notice. You put up those big signs that says cash only. For somebody that needs cash quick, that's a big draw, because most businesses don't take that much cash anymore. Most businesses take debit cards or credit cards, online payments. So if you're advertising your business as cash only, you are, yes, it's great for bookkeeping and personal preferences, how to run a business, but it's also making you a bigger target. So if you can, I would suggest going more towards a credit card, debit card, making sure that you could run transactions that way so you don't keep that much cash on hand. Or if you have to have cash on hand, vary those deposits and do them frequently. Don't ever keep the cash there overnight or take it home. We've seen a lot of people being followed home because they know that this business owner takes all the cash home with them every night instead of going to the bank because it's really late. Also, increase, so check money orders, nothing over $10. If you want to keep that money there, increase the very drops. When you send it out with somebody that you trust and somebody that knows what exactly what they're doing. So, back when I used to work retail, I would have to go to the bank and do the bank drops. Well, they would send me every single day at the same time. So if anybody was watching, they knew exactly where I was going. And not only that, they would give me the same bank deposit bag. Everyone knew that had money in it. That's probably not the smartest thing to do because everyone knew that I was going to the bank with a large amount of cash, and I wasn't that experienced. I was fairly young. So try to switch up the people that go to the bank, or even to the bank you choose to go to. I know some people like specific credit unions and they don't have many of those, but other people do have chain banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, these banks where you have a lot more locations. You don't have to go to the same one, even though you're comfortable with that same one. Try to go to different ones. That will throw off anyone that's following you. And product access. So whenever we have what they call beer runs, as people that go into a location, they go into a business, and they're looking for something that's either high cost, easy to sell, or something that they really want, like alcohol. If you have alcohol in your business, we suggest that you put it in a location that's hard to access. Don't put it right in front. We've had some locations that put that alcohol right in front. And what happens is, people run in, 2 seconds later, they're running out that door, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Try to have those high needs of products in locations that's gonna make it a lot harder for them to get to, or even the amount of product you have out. If you don't need to have 20 of a certain thing out and you only need 2 to 3 of those out at a time before you restock, then I suggest you do that as well. And then follow through with the messaging. People talk. So if people talk, if they know that a certain business will not prosecute, if they know that a certain business will not call the police department when either you steal or you vandalize them or anything like that, then they will keep making you a target. They know the businesses that actually follow through. And I know it's a little bit of a challenge for some places because that means you have to take time out of your day, make the police report, and make sure that you go to court when something happens. But that guarantees that at least you follow through. A lot of the times what tends to happen is we'll get that 911 call, somebody is either stealing, somebody gets caught for the theft. When that court appearance comes around, nobody's there to press charges. So if there's nobody there that says, hey, I was a victim of a crime, then there can't be a sentencing. And the person that committed this crime against you will not face any consequences. And then lets them know, hey, I could go out there and do it again because they're probably not, the business owner wasn't troubled to come out here and to come to court and make sure that I'm responsible for the things that I did. So make sure that you follow through whenever you can. It sends a very clear message. And you have to increase the awareness. This is where you should talk to your employees, especially if they're newer or younger employees at all times. So a while ago, we had an armed robbery at a Baskin Robbins. I believe it was an ice cream shop. So just like myself, those are usually jobs that employ a lot of teenagers, people that don't have a lot of experience. This person, when the armed robbery was in progress, they were so scared that they called their mother first. And they were asking their mother what they should do. So you should talk to your employees and make sure that they know the protocol and the safety protocols. That way, if something does happen, they're not calling somebody else and delaying the help. Having safety meetings with your employees will help tremendously. And like I said, if you're interested in us coming out for a business watch and doing that with you, we will be more than happy to you. All you have to do is contact our unit and it will be completely free and modified to your business. So when you increase the awareness, it's not only for your internal employees, but also your customers. I don't know if you've seen some of these parking lots where you see the safe parking signs, for example, the remove it or lose it campaign that the San Jose Police Department has at the moment. You have to let your customers know, hey, there's a probability that your car is going to get broken into if you leave a laptop in there, if you leave your bags in it. And some people push back and say, but I don't want my customers to get scared. I don't want them to feel like they're coming to an unsafe area. I think at this point, most parking lots are targets, and they're used to coming into parking lots and are grateful when business owners let them know that they should take extra precautions. So your security measures, do you have security? And so what hours do they work? What are their responsibilities? It's very unfortunate, but I had some business owners that didn't know that their security guards were not allowed to really stop any crime. They were only there to observe and report the crime when they saw it. So you have to know what type of service you're signing up for. And I know that's challenging, especially if you're like saying a business complex and you're not the one directly contracting the security company. But I could guarantee you that the facilities or that manager that you're working with at your location will know what services they will offer. And dumpsters, huge problem. Whenever you use a dumpster, you have access to a dumpster and you have a key, try to use it. And I know that's very difficult when you are, say, in a shopping center and more than one business has access to that garbage can or that dumpster. And the complaints are usually one business doesn't lock it up or they lost their keys, so they want 24/7 access to that dumpster. Well, the challenge is when somebody has 24/7 access to that dumpster, everybody has access to that dumpster. So it's not only people going through it and taking product, but it's people illegally dumping. And now you have an excess of trash in your private property because people are now using that dumpster as their own personal dumpster. But sometimes we have people now sleeping in those dumpsters as well. And what that causes is obviously a lot more fear from your employees to go out there by themselves. Nobody should go to a location where they don't know if they're going to encounter somebody inside of a dumpster. If you can, keep them locked. If you cannot keep them locked, put them in a location where they're nice and visible. And try to work with your business neighbors to make sure that everybody goes over those safety protocols. Okay, so robbery. In an unfortunate event where you are a victim of a robbery, first is don't fight it. Give them whatever they need. We don't want anybody hurt over our property or money. Like I said, all of that can be replaced. But that's a very scary situation, especially if somebody has a weapon or somebody uses any force against you to take your property. It's a very scary situation. But if we take some of those precautions that we talked about before, hopefully you will not become a victim of a robbery. So for example, if we update our lighting, if we make sure that our cameras are in place, we talk to our security companies, they know that our dumpsters are nice and locked. We don't keep a lot of cash because they know, hey, this person has different types of day when they go to the bank, or they don't take cash only, they also take credit or debit. So that means that they don't have a lot of cash on hand. If you take some of these precautions, we're hoping that you're not a victim of a robbery, but we can't guarantee that. So think of a robbery as something being taken with intent, and it's done with violence and force. So anything that's yanked out of your body, yanked out of your hand, like a purse snatching, that's a robbery. Having the adequate support is imperative, especially at the end of shift and the beginning of shift, which those are the most hard times to schedule because it's either very early, like it could be up to 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. or very late, 10 to 11 p.m. And usually what people do is say, you know what, I'll have like one person open and one person closed because our busiest time is our lunchtime. So it doesn't make sense to have somebody there in the morning and somebody there at night if we're not going to have this huge rush. But I still encourage you to have adequate staffing, at least at the opening and closing. Nobody should ever be there on their own at that time. When we talk about employee training, and this is something that we do through our updated business watch, they should know what to do during a robbery and after a robbery. So during, yes, give them what they want, 911 when it's safe, comply as much as possible, make sure that they're safe, then their customers are safe. Once that person leaves, this is what we see a lot of issues happening, because say if somebody had fingerprints all over the place, what employees do is they panic and they start touching everything else, making it very hard to lift fingerprints, or they won't know how to access the video. So remember, we're talking about cameras. The after is when the police arrive and they're going to ask your employees, like, what's the password to your camera? If your employee doesn't have that, it's going to be very difficult not to have video of that and make sure that you get the response, or this robbery gets the response that it needs. So they should know what the process is. We can't provide you with a process. You would have to do that. But something basic would be something like 911 every single time they are in danger, and they could safely call or safely text 911 to get the immediate help. Once that happens, then you call the manager, then you call other employees, and you notify everybody else. After that, then you go into your procedure. So if a procedure is that a certain manager is going to come in, that manager should come in and take it over. The last thing that you need is an employee too scared to call 911 because they were told not to by somebody else. Okay. Which is, so robbery is a little different than burglary. Consider a burglary something that somebody wants to do when you're not there. And it usually does happen at night. There doesn't have to be force involved. It could be after the fact, like somebody broke into your business after hours, nobody was there. If we go back and we look at target hardening, hopefully that deters some of the burglars, but now we have to think of alarms and the security systems, your business neighbors. These are imperative things to upgrade with when it comes to burglaries. If you have a business neighbor that operates a 24/7 shop, you probably want to be best friends with them, because they're going to be able to know who's pulling up to your business and not, who's supposed to be there and who's not supposed to be there, and vice versa. If they're running a 24/7 business, maybe they need a little bit of support from you as well. Your security, either cameras or your security companies, like I said, you need to know if the security company is just there to observe and report, or if they're going to drive around, and if so, what hours they're going to drive. If you see suspicious activity spike at a certain time of day, you should communicate that to your security guard company to make sure that they are now allocating those resources to that time of day. And everybody does with parking lots, regardless if you're in a small shopping center, if you're downtown, or if you're in an entertainment district. And there's different types of suspicious activity that happens in a parking lot. So yes, we could have traditional drug sales that occur in a parking lot. We might have people there that are there to cause, just vandalism. They don't want to steal anything. They just want to make sure that there's chaos around them. There's people there that are going to commit theft every day because they need money. So they're going to go and break into cars. And then there's the last one, which is a targeted attack. So think of this as that person that maybe wants to cause harm to a lot of people, and we call that a mass incident. Maybe your business just so happens to be next to either a church or a government building, or what we consider a target. And maybe your business is next to one of these locations. You have to look out for that location just like they're looking out for you, because a danger to that location is a danger to yourself, and vice versa. So when you see people walking up and down the rows of cars, and you know that they're not looking for a specific car. I mean, I know I walk up and down the parking lot a lot of the time, but because I forgot where to park. But I think it's obvious when somebody forgot where their car was, as opposed to somebody who what we consider shopping, like they're just walking up and down the rows, looking at cars, and then they will spot different cars. That's suspicious. That's a non-emergency call right away. And if there's a security guard company, then that's great that you connect with them. So if they're wearing large clothes to conceal things, if they're going to be stealing stuff, they're going to want to conceal them, especially if it's like a summer day and you see somebody with a huge hoodie and they're covering everything. That's a little bit suspicious. If they're sitting in the parking lot for long periods of time and just watching, I know I would take breaks in my car when I used to work retail. So you start to know, like, oh yeah, this person works at this location or at that location. They usually take lunch around this time. But I'm talking about people that seem out of place. So remember that situational awareness. When that gut feeling goes off and says, you know what, that person has been in that car for a mighty long time and they keep staring at that one location, that's probably suspicious. So asking weird questions to business owners, they'll act like they're customers and they'll come in and say, hey, how do you like it here? They'll ask you things like, do you have security? Is it safe? Oh, I'm thinking of opening a business. What do you think? What they're doing is they're getting information from you to make sure that you're a good target, because you need a good target if you're going to if you're gonna go cause either harm or steal from a location, you need a good target. And lastly is try not to stereotype. So we're talking about their behaviors and not their appearance. Sometimes we get calls like this, for example, they'll say, there's suspicious activity right outside my business and I want PD to come out. The dispatcher will ask them, okay, can you describe what's going on? And they'll say, well, there's a bunch of teenagers outside. Dispatcher will ask something like, okay, and what are they doing? And they will respond with something along the lines of, well, they're teenagers, and you know that teenagers just cause trouble, so I don't want teenagers outside of my business. Well, unfortunately, that's really not suspicious behavior. They're not really doing anything wrong. They're not walking up and down looking at cars. They're not trying cars. They're not, they're not vandalizing anything. So we really can't target people just because of the way that they look. Let's look at behaviors. What is a specific person doing that makes them look suspicious? Okay. And when we talk about business safety, we really, especially small businesses, when we tend to employ family members or we tend to employ lifelong friends. And every time we talk about domestic violence at the workplace, people don't know why we do that. But the reason why we talk about domestic violence at the workplace is because if somebody's going through an unfortunate incident of domestic violence and they are trying to remove themselves from that abusive partner, most of the time that abusive partner knows where they work. And if they are going to either go harm them or go look for them, they will usually go to their place of employment because they know that's where they're going to be and that's where they're the most vulnerable. And the reason that this is such an issue is because there's a lot of shame associated with domestic violence. But this is one of the crimes or one of the issues that we see that has absolutely no correlation with income, with race, with age, or even ethnicity or gender. Like this is across the board. Anybody could be a victim of domestic violence. So we want to demystify that. If we demystify that, that allows your employees or people around you to let you know that they're going through something like that and to help them protect you and themselves. So if an employee says something like, hey, I'm going through a divorce, this is my ex-partner, they're not supposed to be on site. Do you mind calling the police department if you do see them on site? Your response should be, I'm sorry you're going through that. I will make sure to call the police department. The last thing that should be said to that person is, what's happening? What's going on? Do you need more help? Remember, this is a very, it's a taboo subject. It's a very hard thing to talk about. So when we start asking very personal questions, that might actually make that person retreat and not want to say anything and not want to report anything. But if they don't report anything to you that they need help and they need help removing this individual from the work site, that puts everybody in danger. So unfortunately, a couple of years ago at a Denny's on First Street, I believe, one of the residents next door was suffering through some issues and it turned very violent in that parking lot. So it will show up at your doorstep. It's up to you as a business owner to know how you're going to talk about this very difficult thing. And if you remember our San Jose PD website, we have resources for families and for people that need shelters and emergency resources. So if you have any employee or you know anybody that's in the situation, just know that you can reach out either to crime prevention to get those resources or go to our SJPD website to get resources for them. If you work near a hotel or around a hotel, or even apartment buildings that are considered high density, what we've seen is an increase in human trafficking. And either they are running small brothels, or we have women that are being trafficked, or children that are being trafficked. So if you see people arrive with large amounts of luggage, they consistently stay there, but they move around rooms. They're not really there for business. They leave cars or luggage unattended. They avoid entrances. So if say they're going to a hotel, they avoid using the main entrance. So we'll try to use the back entrance all the time when they have a lot of visitors. They usually pay in cash. This is a moment where you could help the victim. So I'm just like the domestic violence issue, the human trafficking issue, that's taboo. As a society, we tend to blame the victim that's being trafficked and not look at them as victims. But really, we have a ton of resources, and we would love to help any individual, any age that is in this situation. But we need to be aware of it. So if there is, and we're going to get to reporting in just a second. So let's try not to stereotype or to say things like, oh, that's the life that they want to live, because we don't know that. So if you do come across any of these indicators and you're trusting your gut and you have a gut feeling that something's off, either at this motel or high density building or even business next to you, you can report it anonymously. So when you're working late and you're by yourself, we talked about that earlier. So yes, you have to keep your car door locked at all times. When you're sitting in your car, not everybody does that. Only take clients as appointments when you have to see people and it's a little bit later. When you come and go, try to leave with a partner. You're moving your car to a safe location. You're not weighing yourself down. And you have to scan areas before you go. And I know it's a little I wouldn't say annoying, it's overwhelming to do this at all times, but you have to, especially when things are changing and it's post-pandemic, and a lot of businesses themselves are changing. So your business neighbors might no longer be there. You have to be aware of your new business neighbors as well. And I'm going to try to show this video right quickly. So an increase that we've seen recently or pre-pandemic were purse snatchings. And remember when we were talking about people not knowing how to react in a dangerous situation? Well, this video illustrates that completely. So this was taken in San Jose not so long ago. You see a car here pulling up, grocery store just like any other. I'm pretty sure a lot of us have utilized them before. And there's nothing out of the ordinary. There's people around, it's the middle of the day. But that's a little suspicious, that car moving around. They waited there a second, but if you notice, now there's a person there, right? In that car, just like we all do when we're buying groceries. Person just walks out, and remember, there's people all around, so technically you should feel safe. They take her bag, go into the car. What was the person's reaction? To run after the person with the bag, and that's when people get hurt. And that's the last thing that we need, is somebody to get hurt. But remember that situational awareness that I was talking about. We all let our guards down when it's the middle of the day. All of us. We say, well, nobody's going to commit a crime. It's the middle of the day. No one would ever commit a crime. Well, unfortunately, people commit crimes in daytime too, and it happens that quickly. They sit in that parking lot and they'll wait for the right victim. And it's not the victim's fault. We're all busy. We don't all have a situational awareness. So we have to cut down those red flags. We have to make sure that we cut down their getaway time. Okay, so how to properly report an incident. 911, always first, and that should be your first. But then your supervisors and your immediate stakeholders. So if you have a manager, report it to them. Then you have business neighbors, report it to them. And then your internal documentation, because if you don't document it and you don't call 911, when it does happen, it's like it never occurred. And that's really unfortunate. Skip through this in just a second, and we'll return to this. So we have 911 available in 150 languages, and you should have this number saved on your cell phone, or your employees should know it, that 408-277-8911. That's a direct line to our 911 service. So if your business or your residence is located near a freeway, then that 911 call might go to the highway patrol. And it's going to take a while for highway patrol to figure out, hey, this is actually a San Jose PD phone call. Then they have to reroute it. We don't want to waste time. So if you are near a location that is near a freeway, things like that, it will be rerouted. So try to do the 408-277-8900. We have the 150 languages available. That's for a crime in progress at that moment. And our 311 service has also changed. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that. So it used to be that 311 was considered non-emergency, and it would be routed directly to our dispatchers at the San Jose Police Department. That has changed. When you call 311 now in the city of San Jose, it goes to a city-based service. So people ask us, but what if we still need non-emergency police? When do you call non-emergency for police? That's to report an incident that has already occurred, or to report suspicious activity or follow-up. It's not a 911 emergency, but you still need police presence. That's when you could call 408-277-8900. That is the direct line to our non-emergency police line. Again, if you call 311, you will be routed to a city service. And the city service is not answered all the time, and it's not going to have 911 dispatchers. It has like city dispatchers, very different services. So try to remember that 311 no longer works when you want to do non-emergency for the San Jose Police Department. So when you're calling 911, they're going to ask you specific things. They're going to ask you, like, what does a suspect look like? You have to train yourself, because it's very difficult especially when it's a dangerous situation, to get an accurate description of somebody. So always think of it as top to bottom, inside and out. You have to be very systematic because remember, some of the incidents go by really fast and it's difficult to get all the details. So if I train myself to think hair color, eye color, tattoos, are there earrings, do they have jewelry on, specific jewelry, you get to walk down this list and give it to the dispatcher. And we want as many calls as possible for the same event, not because we want to flood the lines, but because everyone has a different view of that same instance. So maybe somebody only saw the front of this person, while somebody got the back view, and maybe that back view showed a different description. Maybe the jacket that this person had a logo in the back and only the other person saw it. So with all these small pieces of information, we're able to have something that's better for a dispatcher. Same thing with our cars. And it's difficult to describe a car. So for example, they'll ask you, what kind of car is it? And you'll say, hey, you know what? It was a white car, a white Honda. And let's think, how many white Hondas do we have in the city of San Jose? There's a ton of them. So try to look for things on this white Honda that make it unique. Did it have something in the rear view mirror? Did it have a bumper sticker? Maybe one of the windows had a marking, a sticker, or scratching, something like that that makes this particular car different than all the other ones. Of course, a license plate is the best thing, but it's not always easy to get the license plate number or to safely take a picture of it. We never want anyone to jump in front of a car or run out with a phone to try to capture the images of either the person or the car, because we don't know if, just like that video that I showed you earlier, you could get hurt doing that in the process. We want to make sure that everyone's nice and safe. So if you could have the other indicators, that's great. And when you're reporting, remember, we're talking about different jurisdictions. You don't only have to report to San Jose PD. You can report anonymously, and you can report also to the FBI if you believe that's something that's more, a little bit more serious and not just like a run-of-the-mill crime. When you're very fearful that maybe for somebody, for example, is going to commit a crime or a mass incident, something like that, you can report, and we encourage you to report to as many jurisdictions as possible to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We go back to our website. There's a lot of good information because now we're getting to the reporting and the service process or portion of our presentation. So remember, we're talking about human trafficking, even recycling theft, hate crimes. All these can be reported online, and you have the resources there. Usually it goes through about a day or two. After you report it, you will get something back on that email where it gives you a number, a report number, and if there needs to be follow-up, then the follow-up will happen. But remember, if it's an emergency at that moment, do not go online, do the phone number, call the dispatcher, get information at that moment. If it's something that's already happened, then you could feel free to use our online service. And when you want to report something anonymously, because sometimes that happens, maybe you suspect your business neighbor of running, I don't know, a gambling business next door to you, but you don't want to report it because you're fearful. That's understandable. You can go to our P3 tips, mobile crime tips that you can see here. Report it anonymously, put in as much information, and the person will never have your name. You don't have to put your name or any other indicator. You just put in the information, and hopefully it goes to the right unit. So the more descriptors that you have, the better it is, especially if you're reporting something anonymously. If you write something like 123 Main Street is selling drugs, that might be a little bit difficult to prove just because we don't have a description, as opposed to 123 Main Street is, I believe, is selling drugs because they have a lot of foot traffic, they're operating after hours, I've seen people deliver packages at suspicious times, this is what the description is like. Now you're giving us a lot more to work with, and now we might be able to do something about it, as opposed to that very simple description that I showed you earlier, that I gave you earlier. So if you suspect prostitution, human trafficking, drug sales, we do have those available, as well as Crime Stoppers. One indicator that maybe a business neighbor or neighbor is making drugs or selling drugs is sometimes you'll find really weird things in the dumpsters. Things like this picture here in the middle, flares, a lot of the Sudafed or a lot of the small pill packaging. When you start seeing things that are really out of place at your dumpster, that might be an indicator that somebody's making something on site. And it doesn't have to be a business neighbor. Maybe somebody's trespassing onto your business and using your business to make these drugs. And unfortunately, we have seen this, including in apartment buildings and businesses, where somebody has trespassed onto the business and is making drugs on that site. If you are dealing with homeless issues or other trespassing issues, there is also a resource with the city. They've been fairly good, especially with the pandemic. I know that we have removed a lot of the restrictions for the moment, but that doesn't mean that we have stopped all access or all resources. Most of the time when there's something that's reported there, we will have something like a intervention specialist that will go out to this person and provide them resources to see if they want to remove themselves from living from the street, or gives them resources to make sure that they're not conducting that unsafe behavior that was being reported before. The issue and the challenge that we have, if I'm being very transparent, is that we don't all areas the same way. For example, Caltrans has its own jurisdictions. We cannot go onto that property. Anything that's considered the water district, that's completely different and considered private property. Parks, Union Pacific, all those railroad tracks, and the Santa Clara roads and their airport. So when we get complaints saying, hey, there's an encampment right next to the waterway, next to my business, I want it removed, it's difficult for us to do that because it's literally a different jurisdiction and we have to go through different procedures. But that doesn't mean that there can be nothing done. You as a business owner can reach out to the outreach to make sure that those concerns are shared. And we're almost at the end of our resources. I'm going to stop with 1 second. Stop program. Our other resources. So usually, like I said, we get 100% of the problem, which is natural. And then we start delegating some of the things that don't fall onto our plate. But sometimes as a business owner, it's good for you to have those resources on hand. So yes, the 311, that's city-based. You could still report graffiti. You could still report streetlight outages. Now, for graffiti removal, if it's on private property, that's very different as opposed to if it being on public or city property. Vehicle abatements. So if you believe somebody has abandoned a vehicle, of course, some agencies or some organizations have their own tow service. But if you believe a car that was stolen was dumped on your property, you can call the vehicle abatement. Crime Stoppers, just like I said, that's anonymous reporting. Homeless concerns, those are when you have encampments and you want to make sure that they get the information that they need. Code enforcement, so that maybe you have a neighbor that has a lot of blight or they're using the property improperly. That maybe you're fearful that there's a fire hazard. Maybe you're fearful that that they added extra rooms and it's making it very dangerous for everybody else because they're unsanctioned. That would be something that's code enforcement. Illegal dumping, which is huge. If it's illegal dumping on a private property, unfortunately, that does belong to the property owner. But if it's illegal dumping and it's maybe adjacent to a city-owned property, you can report that because it's city public property. One great resource is the Santa Clara County resources. So as city, we tend to only focus on our city resources. But I found that the county has a ton of underutilized resources when it comes to business owners. And again, that could be from removing blight to fixing some of those surrounding areas like the street lights, the parking areas, or even working with them to clear out some of those waterways or clear out some of those shared areas that we talked about, the Caltrans, and other areas that we're not able to go to because of our jurisdiction and our limits. So I know we are almost at the end of our portion. So really, I want to stress, it's really preventive. What we do is we try to specify and do things that are preventive for everybody. And that's difficult because we can't predict all the crimes that are going to happen on site, but we can try to utilize ourselves and bring ourselves together to make sure that we address some of those issues that we know are coming our way. So like I said, if you are a business owner and you would want something specifically either like this or more tailored to your business, we will be more than happy to do that. All you would have to do is reach out to the crime prevention unit. Anything within the bounds of San Jose is free, and we have different topics. So not all businesses have the same issues. This was a very general overview, but again, if we do something that's specific to you, we will go on site, conduct a basic assessment, and try to tailor something specifically for you. We provide the presentations in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Sometimes we're able to provide those at the same time. Sometimes we're not. We're able to schedule them back to back, but that is an option for you. Maybe you don't need a presentation, and that's great because it's maybe 2 of you on site and you just need a little bit more support, or reach out to a captain or a lieutenant to express some of your concerns. We're here for that too. So we're directly in contact with lieutenants that are able to hear some of those concerns, and we try to mitigate that for you. So I know we're coming towards the end, but I want to know if we have any questions at the moment that we could answer. I don't see any coming through.
Monica, I'm always amazed at the crime prevention specialists, and I think I learn something new every time I hear a presentation. I really appreciate, sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have. I had a question, actually. I'm trying to think of what that question was. Maybe others have the same kind of thing, or your brain freezes a little bit. In some areas, maybe I'll just, an example that happened is, for example, like maybe there was a gang homicide or something like that, and there, or even not even that, just maybe someone passed away by a car accident or something like that, and you're in front of your business, on the sidewalk or something like that, and the family put up, pictures and candles, and is there a way to deal with that? I mean, is that something that?
Yes, actually. And although they're different, whenever anybody passes, it's very unfortunate, and we all grieve in different ways, especially from different cultures. We all grieve in different ways. But then that also affects other people. It might cause a safety issue or a fire issue in some locations. So if it's a huge memorial that maybe somebody passed away, there is an intervention team. So the Mayor's Gang Task Force usually takes care of that, and they have interventionists. And what happens after something that's very violent like that, we try to work with the surrounding neighbors and the business neighbors to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So they usually take care of that. As opposed to, maybe there was a car accident and unfortunately somebody passed and you have a growing memorial. There's still ordinances that abide for those memorials. So you could still call that non-emergency line and try to get help and resources. What we advise you not to do is to take it upon yourself to remove this memorial yourself, just because, like I said, if somebody's mourning, they have the right to do that. And you also don't want to put yourself in a situation that's now dangerous because the person that put out this memorial feels slighted in some way. It's usually better to do that through a city agency, and the city agency will take care of that. But you have to let us know that it's causing some sort of issue to your business. Usually when there's a memorial and it's not in anyone's way, nobody's really complaining about it, it's allowed to stay for the amount of time that the city allows it to stay.
Thank you. I always wonder about that, what you can do, and certainly it's unsettling, but also could create just either perception, and again, or people just gathering a lot, and it makes people feel uncomfortable wanting to go patronize your business. So thank you for sharing that. There are resources that you can, that businesses can get to deal with stuff like that.
Is there anything else? I was just asking if there's anything else at the moment, and I know it's difficult to ask through this, this platform, and there might be things that are very personal that you want to ask. You can reach out to the crime prevention unit. I don't know if you're able to give them our information, our contact information through that email service.
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely shoot out some information that way. And just sort of, you kind of talked about the general overview. I believe there's like Foothill Division, Western, Central, and Southern, right? There's 4 different divisions.
Yes, there's 4 different divisions.
And my understanding is that each division has crime prevention specialists assigned to them.
Yes, so every division has at least 2. We lost a couple along the way because it got promoted or within the city. So yes, each division has at least 2 crime prevention specialists assigned to each area. So when you call our office, it's that 408-277-4133. That's one of the oldest running phone numbers with the San Jose Police Department. So whenever you Google San Jose PD, it's one of the first number that pops up. We actually do pick up the phone and we check our messages constantly. So you will be able to get a hold of any one of us. And if you don't know what area you're in, that's fine. All you have to do is provide your address and we'll figure out what area you belong to, and then we'll pass you along to your specialist.
And that phone number again is 408-277-4133. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Right there. So great. Thank you so much, Monica. Again, I always learn something new when I hear your presentations. I want to thank everybody for attending. I did record the information, so maybe we'll also, share it out on the SJ Economy website. We have a YouTube page, and we're trying to make all these business webinars accessible for those people who are not able to attend. And again, just want to thank everybody. Oh, hold on a second here. I think I have so here's a question. I'm a photographer, and shooting in San Francisco has become a big problem. How can I protect myself from being robbed? And I hear that the PD and SF are very lackadaisical about enforcing it, and culprits are usually given a slap on the wrist.
That's a little bit outside of our scope because we can't speak on other agencies. But what I do know is if we can implement some of those things, just like we said, if you are too afraid to have it, don't take it with you. If you have a lot of expensive camera equipment and you're by yourself, that's obviously a big target. So if you do have to go do a shoot, take somebody with you. If you have to keep the things in your car, you have to remember that's a huge target. Even if you have something in your locked trunk. So if the sooner you could take that equipment with you and not take like a lunch break where you're in a busy intersection and people see you lock up the car, the better. Going at a specific time of day where there's more people out, but just like that video, just because there's people out doesn't mean it's safer. Sometimes those robberies will occur in daylight when there's people around you. And remember, the actual prosecution is very different than the arrest. So the officers in the police departments, it will be the initial contact and they will say, hey, I believe there's a crime here. But ultimately, the district attorney will be the one that presses the charges. So those are two very different agencies. And a lot of the time we get people that get frustrated with PD because they'll say, hey, you let them go. And we let them know, it's like, we didn't let them go. We made the arrest. We made sure to have the report and we brought charges, but it's not to another agency to follow through. And if you recall when I said we need a victim to actually be there to say they're a victim, a lot of the times the victims of the crimes don't want to go to court and they don't want to testify. And when that happens, the judge says, hey, there literally is no crime because there's no victim. You cannot have punishment if there's no victim there. So when we say there has to be follow through, we hope that that victim follows through with all the procedures to make sure that it's something reasonable and a good outcome for them.
So one of the attendees raised a couple of things. One that what's your view on whistles if you're alone and you're trying to draw attention to yourself?
Anything is better than nothing. But if it were me personally, I would rather scream fire if I'm in danger. Because remember, you're in a big city. How many times have we heard sirens, police cars, ambulances? And it's kind of like noise pollution at one time. Like we are just so used to random noises that when you hear a whistle, it doesn't really call our attention because there might be a sports game down the street. As opposed to you hear somebody screaming fire. That's very rare to have somebody scream fire in the middle of a big city. So that will probably call more attention to you. Again, something is better than nothing, so a whistle will help. But a lot of the time that's lost in a bigger city because we have a lot of noise.
Okay. So yes, some thank yous. And just, the person who asked the question about San Francisco is kind of asking, is this issue also happening in San Jose? So I think you kind of explained that, where it's, PD can come out and show up. They can find the person, but you still have to file charges, and there has to be enough sort of a victim, present as well, and the DA to say we have enough evidence to prove that there was a harm that was done, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you for using the chat and the question and answer feature.
It looks like we don't have any other questions. But I want to thank you for having us and thank all the participants. I know that maybe somebody's going to watch this in the recording, and if they have a question, they could go ahead and reach out to the crime prevention unit either through the phone number or through our website. We'll be more than happy to follow up, regardless of what that question is. If you think it's silly, it's not. We have all types of questions and we're used to hearing it all. So we'll be more than happy to provide the resources that are available to us. But again, thank you for having us.
Very good. Thank you very much. And you have a wonderful rest of the week and a wonderful weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.